The series opens with a brutal murder committed by a cold-blooded killer. After shooting the victim, the killer kicks the body several times, removes the bullet casing, and covers the corpse with a cloth. The scene then shifts to Jack Reacher, a former military police officer, arriving in Margrave, Georgia. Outside a diner, Jack notices a man aggressively confronting his girlfriend. With a sharp look, Jack forces the man to apologize immediately. Inside the diner, Jack is served coffee and cassava. Just as he is about to eat, police cars surround the building, and Jack realizes they are there for him. Confident in his innocence, he does not resist arrest. He came for coffee, not handcuffs. This is Reacher Season 1. At the station, Officer Roscoe Conklin processes Jack's identity, but Jack remains silent. Along with his passport and cash, the police find a Medal of Honor in his pocket. Detective Oscar Finley interrogates Jack, reading the murder charges and describing the victim as a man shot in the back of the head and beaten after death. The swollen fingertips make identification difficult. Oscar offers a lawyer, but Jack insists he did not kill anyone. Meanwhile, Roscoe grows suspicious because Jack's identity cannot be found online. The only record shows his parents are dead, and he has an older brother. Jack had led a special military police unit and admits he is killed in duty, but only for justified reasons. He suspects 3 people killed the victim, based on the mix of 9mm and subsonic bullets and the use of silencer. Jack believes the killers have done this before, enjoying violence even after death. Oscar is surprised by Jack's detailed insight. Oscar accuses Jack because he fits a suspect's description near the crime scene. Jack reveals he came to Margrave to research Blind Black, a blues singer who died in town. Since the victim died at midnight, proving Jack was on a bus at that time could clear him. The police investigate a phone number found in the victim's shoe and a note with the word pluribus. A flashback shows Jack and his brother Joe as teenagers moving to a new town. Local kids bully them, but the brothers fight back.
You don't have to do this. It's never just your fight.
Back in the present, Jack waits in jail, lying on his bunk. Roscoe offers him coffee, believing in his innocence. Using the phone number, Oscar visits Paul Hubble's home. Paul acts nervous when he spots a suspicious car and unexpectedly confesses to the murder. However, he knows nothing about the victim or the motive. Paul is arrested and jailed alongside Jack. With Paul's confession, Jack is released, but Oscar remains doubtful since Paul, a banker with no criminal record, seems out of place. Jack wants to leave town, but Oscar stops him and urges him to stay. Jack notices that Officer Stevenson's cousin is Paul's wife. He also deduces that Oscar is a stubborn Harvard graduate recently divorced and trying to quit smoking. Oscar is stunned by Jack's accurate observations. Oscar calls Stevenson to confirm Paul's alibi. Paul and his wife were at a party until 2 a.m., far from the crime scene. Oscar changes course, saying both men will stay in jail a week until the true killer is found. At prison, Jack and Paul are assigned a cell away from others. Officers insist they change into prison uniforms. Jack refuses to remove his pants, suspecting a lecherous guard's intentions. He warns the guard he won't stay silent if pushed. Their cell has a ceiling height of 1.95 meters. The next morning, Jack notices their cell is in the maximum security area. Trouble arrives quickly when 3 inmates demand Paul's shoes and glasses. The attackers try to strip Paul's pants, but Jack intervenes and warns them to back off. When they refuse, Jack fights and defeats them. In the yard, Paul admits he is a financial manager forced into illegal schemes by his boss. He sticks close to Jack, even during bathroom visits. The following day, 5 men enter the restroom intending to attack Jack. Again, Jack warns them. When they attack, Jack fights fiercely, defeating all 5 and seriously injuring one. Guards rush to the scene, shocked by Jack's dominance. Jack and Paul, originally meant for the upper floor, are now placed in general population. Back at the station, Oscar remains amazed by Jack's precise insights. He attempts to call his wife, Sharon, hoping to reconcile. Meanwhile, Roscoe presents Jack's military record as a West Point graduate, Silver Star recipient, Legion of Merit awardee, and hero who saved 12 comrades in an explosion. Jack solved over 150 cases as military police. Oscar doubts Jack's guilt and regrets the wrongful imprisonment. Frustrated, he reaches for a cigarette. In prison, Jack claims guard Spivey deliberately placed them in general population under orders. Soon, both men are released. Paul is picked up by his wife, while Jack is collected by Roscoe. She shows video proof of Jack on the bus at the time of the murder, confirming his innocence. Jack plans to leave town, but Roscoe invites him to dinner and shopping. At the barbershop, Jack notices a suspicious car tailing him. The old barber tells Jack about Margrave's history. Billionaire Kliner founded several companies and funded the city. The men following Jack are Kliner Jr. and Cousin Dawson. Jack confronts them. Kliner Jr. warns that Margrave won't let a murderer walk free easily. Back at the police station, Roscoe informs Jack about another body shot with the same caliber. Jack is taken to see the corpse. The forensic expert notes the victim's swollen hand. Jack suspects the victim had a latex allergy triggered when the perpetrator wore vinyl gloves. The victim's healed arm fracture points to treatment in Berlin. Jack realizes the victim is his brother, Joe Richard. Grieving, Jack faces Oscar, who questions why Joe came to town. Their confrontation grows heated. Jack vows to find and kill those responsible for Joe's death. Over the following weeks, Roscoe was assigned to watch over Jack as he launched his own investigation into his brother's killers. Together, they returned to Paul's house to question his wife. While Roscoe conducted the interview, Jack excused himself to use the bathroom, but instead searched the shoe room. There, he discovered a small seed stuck to one of Paul's shoes and suspected that Paul might be the next target. He explained that in prison, many inmates had tried to harm Paul. The seed found on Paul's shoe was also discovered near Joe's murder scene, suggesting Paul could have been present during the crime. Jack and Roscoe then headed back to the crime scene. Jack reconstructed the moment and suspected that one of the killers was a skilled sniper. The shooter had hit the second victim while running in the dark, proving expert marksmanship. Using shoe prints, Jack mapped Joe's position when he was shot. He revealed that Joe worked for the Department of Homeland Security, dealing with drugs, arms trafficking, and border control. The murder was likely connected to Joe's work, although Jack admitted they had not spoken in years. Jack checked into a hotel to rest while Roscoe kept watch nearby. Soon, four thugs approached, claiming that Kliner Jr. had paid them $100 to beat Jack. Jack tried to avoid conflict, but when they threw a bottle at him, he quickly took them down. Roscoe watched in disbelief. That same night, four armored men broke into a house. The next morning, Jack spots a thirsty dog. Its owner claims it was watered, but the bowl is dry. Roscoe informed Jack that Police Chief Morrison had been found murdered at his home. At the scene, Jack suspected Morrison's body had been nailed to the wall. Paul had mentioned that his superior threatened to hang Paul's corpse if he disobeyed orders. Seeing Morrison's grim state confirmed Jack's fears. He concluded that Morrison and other officers were involved in bribery, and when Morrison refused to cooperate, he was killed. These criminals held strong influence. Jack warned Oscar and Roscoe to watch Stevenson and Bakers closely. Returning to Paul's house, they found him missing. His wife was worried, so Roscoe decided to protect her family. Jack borrowed a car to continue investigating with Oscar. In the garage, Jack spotted a bag labeled Axis Financial and took a folding knife from it. Oscar should have become police chief, but the mayor, Mr. Groove, appointed himself instead. This hinted at Mr. Groove's involvement in the murders and corruption. Some citizens doubted and mocked Oscar's ability and questioned Jack's presence. Businessman Kliner defended Jack, pointing out that Joe was also a victim. Kliner boasted of spending heavily to rebuild the city and promised more funds to help solve the case. Oscar asked Mr. Groove to approve an investigation into the serial murders for patterns. Oddly, Mr. Groove claimed Morrison's murder was unrelated. Oscar was assigned to review archives of notorious criminals Morrison once arrested who are now free. Jack suspected Kliner's involvement, knowing wealth often masks dark secrets. In public, Oscar and Roscoe followed Mr. Groove's orders, but secretly they continued working together to uncover the truth. To protect Paul's family, Oscar enlisted FBI agent Picard from Atlanta, a trusted friend who had once warned Oscar against working in Margrave. Mr. Groove suggested Jack return home, but Jack refused. Determined, he wanted to catch the culprit dead or alive. The barber Mosley bought Jack a cell phone and warned him that 2 Spaniards had come looking for him. At Paul's house, Jack urged Paul's wife, Charlene, to pack up and move with FBI protection. Charlene doubted Paul was dead, but Jack feared the worst since Paul had been targeted in prison. Remembering childhood, Jack saw kids bullying a boy named Billy. He stepped in, but the fight ended when Billy's parents arrived. Jack's thoughts broke as he spotted a suspicious car near Paul's home. He rushed inside to warn Charlene. When a man appeared, Jack grabbed Roscoe's gun, only to find it was Picard. With Charlene safe, Jack continued his investigation by targeting prison guard Spivey. Jack called Spivey, pretending to be Oscar, and invited him to a meeting, claiming Jack Reacher was suing him for assault. That night, Spivey suspected the caller was Jack and set a trap. Two armed men forced Jack into a trunk. Jack refused, saying it was too small for him. While the men hesitated, Jack fought back. He struggled, but finally overpowered them until police arrived, arresting the attackers and taking Jack back to Roscoe for treatment. Analyzing the attackers, Jack suspected they were current or former South American military, speaking Spanish and armed with Glock 17s. Roscoe learned Joe worked for a Secret Service division. Oscar suspected this division was tied to forgery because Paul managed currency. Crimes involving drugs, weapons, and trafficking all involved money. Once patched up, Jack planned to search Spivey's house. Oscar forbade it, saying he would go instead. Jack refused to back down. Roscoe stepped in to calm things and invited Jack to relax at a cafe in Alabama. During the trip, Jack and Roscoe grew closer. On the way back, border officers stopped their car. Jack prepared for trouble, but found none. The officers warned of heavy rain and flooding, telling them to turn back. They stayed overnight at a motel. Still awkward, they shared stories but no romance. Roscoe revealed she was raised by her father's friend Gray after losing her parents. Gray taught her policing, but later died by suicide after suffering depression. Gray used to give her Easter flowers on her birthday. The next morning, Jack accompanied Roscoe home only to find her front door forced open. The house was empty except for a message, "See you again." The criminals had started targeting Roscoe directly. Now Jack knew he needed a real weapon. Roscoe looked tense and angry after learning that the criminals had started targeting her. As an officer trained by the FBI and CIA, she showed no fear. At Jack's request, she handed him a pistol that once belonged to her late mentor, Gray. At the hospital morgue, Coroner Jasper identified the latest victim as Pete Jobling, a truck driver for an expedition company. Forensics found high levels of hydrogen sulfide in his blood. Pete had no serious criminal record, only minor offenses. What raised suspicion was that an elite lawyer named Zachariah Espers had defended him in court. Soon, Roscoe received a call from Molly Beth Gordon, a Secret Service staffer in Washington, D.C. She had just learned that her boyfriend Joe was murdered. Joe had recently been promoted to lead the anti-counterfeiting section. He had cracked many domestic cases, but had begun targeting larger international firms. Jack asked Molly to send all of Joe's case files. From these, Jack concluded that the crimes all revolved around money, and Paul, as currency manager at Axis Financial, was connected. Oscar planned to investigate discreetly, starting with a visit to prison guard Spivey's house. Meanwhile, Roscoe would return to headquarters and pretend to be searching for Morrison's killer, to avoid arousing suspicion from Mayor Groove. At police headquarters, Roscoe lied to her colleague Stevenson about Paul and his cousin, who had suddenly disappeared. She suspected Stevenson's involvement with the criminals. Oscar arrived at Spivey's house outside Margrave. A neighbor spotted him and alerted the local police. Although Spivey was absent, Oscar found a backup phone with recent calls to Kliner Industries. Before he could trace the number, local cops attacked him from behind. Meanwhile, Jack met Zachariah Perez to request Pete Jobling's traffic records. The lawyer refused and threatened to ruin Jack. Jack countered with a threat of his own, forcing Perez to hand over the files.
Brennan.
Oscar was released from detention, bloodied and annoyed. Roscoe scolded the officers who had mistaken him for a thief. Jack and the officers met at a diner. Jack learned that Pete worked for Kliner Industries, but still did not understand why Kliner had paid for the lawyer. Oscar found evidence that Spivey had contacted Kliner Industries and suspected the company's involvement in forgery. They decided to investigate further. Jack wanted to break into Kliner Industries to gather proof. Oscar objected to the illegal plan, sparking an argument until Roscoe stepped in. Later, Jack and Oscar continued their work. Jack fed the thirsty dog he had seen before. The man suspected to own the dog said it belonged to his late uncle and that he was just caring for it. At Kliner Industries, there were no CCTV cameras. Workers moved large amounts of animal feed. A woman led them to meet Mr. Kliner. In a lobby, Jack noticed preserved animal heads and suspected the Kliner family were skilled snipers. During the meeting, Oscar asked Kliner about Spivey's calls and Pete Jobling. Kliner denied close ties to Pete, saying the lawyer was simply legal support for employees. He suspected Spivey had friends in the company, explaining the calls. Oscar was unsatisfied. Kliner bragged about his city investments and mocked Oscar's Harvard background. He advised Oscar to drop the case. Oscar warned that anyone involved would face a hard fight. Shortly after, Jack and Oscar were kicked out. Jack was pleased that Oscar was fighting aggressively. He saw Kliner as a bully unaware that he too could be punished. Jack recalled when two Marines investigated an assault on Curtis Bishop, a bully. Actually, Jack was responsible, but Joe took the blame. Jack urged Roscoe and Oscar to leave their homes and stay safe. When Roscoe visited Oscar's place, Jack pointed out that the large amounts of feed at Kliner Industries seemed excessive. Roscoe thought it reasonable since many locals owned cattle. The next day, they stayed at a motel for protection. Jack planned to find Spivey at a place called Blue Cat or Uncover Clues. While Roscoe shopped at a mini-market, Kliner Jr. confronted her. He claimed he had been watching her and Jack. He accused Jack of killing civilians in Baghdad and called him a murderer unworthy of Roscoe's trust. Kliner Jr. promised to protect her from criminals, but Roscoe ignored him and walked away. That night, Oscar met a senior Axis financial official. Disguised as analyst Steve, he probed about Paul. A colleague said Paul left a year ago and that the currency division was dissolved. At a bar, a woman flirted with Oscar, but he remained focused on his ex-wife and felt unready for a new relationship. Jack visited Blue Cat Bar and paid an old man for Spivey's location. A muscular ex-boxer claiming to be Spivey's friend refused to talk. Jack beat him badly. The man revealed that Spivey had been taken by Spaniards recently, seeming rushed. As Jack left, he spotted a suspicious car. He returned inside for gloves, then sped away. At a remote spot, Jack hid in the grass. Two Spaniards exited the vehicle and searched the area. Jack shot both from behind, killing them instantly. He covered his fingerprints and collected casings and money from their pockets. Opening their car trunk, Jack found Spivey's fresh corpse, killed just hours before. Jack placed the two dead hitmen and Spivey's body into the car trunk, breaking their legs to fit them into the tight space. Soon after, Oscar called, asking Jack to come to a burned-out vehicle found nearby. Jack suspected it was Joe's SUV, though identifying it proved difficult without license plates. Roscoe arrived to assist. With the vehicle's VIN burned off, Jack used a military trick, applying tomato ketchup, to reveal the number. Oscar planned to involve FBI agent Picard for better identification. Jack recounted his attack by the two South American hitmen and the discovery of Spivey's corpse. Oscar questioned why Jack had killed both men. Jack explained it was self-defense. Roscoe helped plan how to quietly dispose of the bodies. She noted from the wounds that Jack had shot them from behind, not the front as he told Oscar. Jack admitted he had taken the chance to act first to avoid being killed. Roscoe then brought up Kliner Jr.'s accusations and asked Jack about Baghdad. Jack explained that while tracking a fugitive, he had noticed kids playing soccer every night in an old hangar. One evening, when the kids didn't leave, he checked and found 3 men harassing them. Jack gave the men a choice: surrender to the police or face him. They returned that night, and Jack shot all 3 dead. He believed Kliner had bought protection and information with money. Jack and Roscoe planned to dump the bodies at the airport. After disabling cameras and deceiving guards, they left the car with the bodies in the parking lot. While watching workers move cargo, Jack recalled asking Mosley about Kliner's business. Mosley said Kliner's main ventures were in real estate and chemicals. They booked a nice hotel room with cash taken from the hitman. Jack used a toothpick to jam the door hinge, slowing any pursuers. Molly called, saying she was ready with Joe's files. To avoid tracking, Roscoe instructed Molly to take the train to 5 Point Station the next day. Molly revealed she and Joe had been close for 2 years and described Joe as dedicated. She found Jack smart, but sometimes annoying. Roscoe comforted Jack, who was lost in thoughts about Joe's death. Then they shared a quiet, romantic night. The next morning, they visited Pete Jobling's parents' home. The parents did not yet know Pete was dead. Jack told them about trucking company hijackings, but assured them Pete was not involved. Pete's mother seemed relieved and said Pete had lived with his wife in Broke Heave for a long time. Jack lied to avoid upsetting them and wasting time on emotion. Oscar was called by Mayor Groove, who warned him about disturbing Kliner. Since Groove was part of Kliner's bribery ring, he demanded respect for Kliner and threatened to fire Oscar if he acted without approval. Groove assigned Oscar to investigate ex-cons with grudges against Morrison. Picard contacted Oscar in code, telling him to go to location 2S3B within an hour. He said Paul's family was safe and gave Charlene a pistol for protection. Picard promised to return soon. Jack and Roscoe arrived at Pete's modest house. Pete's wife, Judy, showed no regret over Pete's death, blaming him for stealing air conditioners from Kliner Industries in Miami. Jack and Roscoe found empty AC boxes in the garage. Oscar called Jack to head to Picard's location. Jack suspected Pete was involved in Kliner's counterfeiting operation. He believed fake money was made in South America by those who had sent the hitmen and then shipped to Florida. Pete's job was collecting it disguised in empty U.S. boxes sent to Margrave. This was only a hypothesis. They needed Joe's files to confirm. At the meeting point, Picard passed by and urged them to follow him closely to avoid being tracked. Picard said the burned car had been rented from Chevy Equinox by Ron Hassey, an alias Joe used. This confirmed the car belonged to Joe. Picard gave a hotel address Joe had used. Jack memorized it and destroyed the paper to avoid tracking. Arriving late at the hotel, they found Joe's bag already gone. Jack trusted Joe had left other clues. In the trash, Jack found a piece of clothing Joe had deliberately discarded. A note in the pocket read Pete's garage and Kliner Gray's files. Suddenly, gunfire erupted across the street. Everyone scattered. Two hitmen chased Jack, knowing he carried Joe's message. Jack's car was trapped. He killed one hitman. The chase continued until Jack cornered the other. The hitman pointed a gun, but Roscoe shot him from behind, saving Jack. She slapped Jack, worried he had risked himself on purpose. Jack admitted he had distracted the killers because he cared for her. Oscar suspected the hotel leak came from Stevenson overhearing phone calls between him and Picard. Jack found surveillance gear in Spivey's car, suggesting their enemies used parabolic microphones to spy on them. Jack recalled his childhood when he was reported for hitting a general's child. Though it had been self-defense, the general bore a grudge, trying to have Jack's father demoted, cut his salary, and transferred to Germany. Their father disliked Joe, even though Jack had been the culprit. Back with the team, they studied Joe's clothes. Initials and numbers on paper included PH, WB, and SC. Jack recalled ordering navigation with the Air National Guard in Memphis, code area JW901. They searched Pete's garage for Kliner Gray's files, but found nothing. They split tasks to call the numbers. Jack contacted the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Roscoe reached William Brandt, an economics professor at Princeton returning from Europe. Oscar called Columbia's economics dean, Professor Stefani Castillo, also returning from the same event. Jack planned to investigate these institutions because corrupt federal agents could be more dangerous than professors. He contacted France Neagley, a trusted former military subordinate, asking her to check the EPA number with JW initials in Memphis. After heading to the airport train station to pick up Molly, they lost track of her. Searching Joe's files, they found the bag emptied. Following the railway, Jack found Molly badly injured and bleeding. With Molly's death, their key clue to the money counterfeiting ring was lost. Jack and his team pressed forward with the investigation into the serial murders and counterfeiting ring. After Molly's death, Jack realized the mafia was well organized and tracked informants with ease. They concluded that the Margrave police were corrupt, working in collusion with Atlanta and Georgia law enforcement. Even federal agents appeared compromised. On the road, Jack spotted the weak dog again and asked Oscar to pull over. Oscar knew the dog's story. When the owner arrived, Jack punched him and took the dog with him. Roscoe smiled, pleased to see Jack and Oscar finally cooperating after their past conflicts. After sending the dog to a shelter, Oscar drove Jack to Paul's house to collect a new car, replacing the bullet-riddled old one. Jack noticed Paul's new vehicle before visiting Kliner's cattle farm, puzzled by why Kliner purchased so much feed for only 116 cows. Before leaving, Jack found the same seed from Paul's shoe at the farm, confirming Paul had been there. Back at the station, Jack saw Roscoe cleaning her car, vandalized by Kliner Jr.'s gang. Jack rushed to confront Kliner Jr., mocking him as a coward who hid behind money and bullied women. When Kliner Jr. insulted Roscoe, calling her a slut, Jack immediately fought him and his gang. Though outnumbered 3-1, Jack easily overpowered him. Oscar and Roscoe arrived, drawing their guns as Kliner Jr. pulled a knife. Kliner showed up and told his son to calm down. Oscar refused Kliner's order to expel Jack, reminding him he answered to no one. Roscoe escorted Jack away after a witness claimed Jack started the fight. Jack admitted he acted to protect Roscoe, just as Molly had cared for her brother. Soon after, Roscoe was fired by Mr. Groove for mentioning that Joe's license plate matched a prisoner's rental car, even though the car had no plates. Mr. Groove suspected the investigation and wanted it stopped. Though Jack had beaten Kliner Jr., no charges followed, as Kliner wanted to avoid a trial. While waiting for professors to return from Europe, Jack decided to investigate Kliner Industries' employee lists and finances. He recalled the diary left by Roscoe's late adoptive father, Gray, and checked a weapons box Gray had given them. Inside, Jack found a hidden drawer with a key. Roscoe mentioned that Gray often visited Barbara Mosley, who now held a large box left by Gray. They studied the records. Jack noted Kliner's farm had 116 cows, but purchased far more feed than needed. Roscoe, tired of hearing about it, recalled her uncle had to report owning 120 cows. Jack suspected Kliner kept feed purchases just below government reporting thresholds, though he was unsure why so much feed was required. Gray's documents included detailed financial reports showing expenses did not match income. Kliner had bribed nearly everyone in Margrave to hide his secret business. Jack wondered why Kliner had chosen Margrave as his base. Jack showed Margrave on a map highlighting a perfect distribution hub. Old state routes crossed there, allowing trucks to move between states without police detection. Oscar suggested Kliner killed secret agents because a Coast Guard blockade had prevented counterfeit money from entering the U.S. for a year. They suspected the money would be used to buy something dangerous or disrupt the U.S. and Panama economies. While reading Gray's diary, Roscoe learned her adoptive father had been murdered, not a suicide as she had believed. The scene flashback. Young Jack and Joe, with their parents, were told to apologize to a general's child. Joe complied, but Jack refused, confident he had done nothing wrong. Jack insisted Curtis deserved worse. Later, Neagley contacted Jack with urgent information. Jack moved to Memphis and met her at a quiet restaurant near a hotel. Neagley now worked in the private sector and stayed in a fancy hotel. While walking in the park, Jack worried that enemies used parabolic microphones to spy on them. Neagley revealed that the JW initials on Joe's list referred to investigator Jimmy Dupree Willix from the EPA, who had been shot dead at home. The FBI labeled it a failed robbery. The killer had used a 9mm pistol and beaten the body afterward. Jack was shocked. The case mirrored Joe's murder. Neagley urged Jack to meet Memphis cop O'Coin. They planned to meet an informant who might know the mastermind behind Jimmy's death. The case was tied to toxic pollution in Mississippi. Neagley warned Jack the criminals were ruthless and connected. Roscoe asked the coroner for photos of Gray's body. Though ruled to fall, Roscoe suspected he died from a blow. The wound pattern matched the diamond's imprint. Jack and Neagley met their informant at a reservoir. The man, a fishing enthusiast, said pollution had worsened over the past year. He suspected Clarin Chemical, a wealthy company now closed. Its parent company was Kliner Industries. Back in Margrave, Jack concluded that Kliner had killed Jimmy and Joe before their pollution cases were exposed. They hurried to meet Officer O'Coin. Meanwhile, Roscoe punched Mr. Groove after discovering the diamond stick he carried had been used to kill Gray. Oscar, shocked, rushed to take Roscoe out of town for her safety. That night, Jack and Neagley met agents O'Coin and Ribidux. They planned to meet an informant who might expose federal agent corruption. At a nightclub, the informant called the agent Viking but did not know his real name. Oscar placed Roscoe in a motel for protection after Mr. Groove ordered her arrest. She replaced Picard guarding Charlene and her children. Roscoe called Jack, joking she wanted to beat up Mr. Groove before the case ended. Neagley smiled, sensing a connection between Jack and Roscoe. Suddenly, Ribidux pulled a gun on O'Coin, fearing for his life. After shooting O'Coin dead, Ribidux pursued Jack and Neagley. They sank their car in a river to escape and decided to split up. Jack returned to Margrave, while Neagley continued chasing Viking in Memphis. That night, Oscar snuck into Kliner Industries. He found Kliner's boss dead in his bloodied office chair. This meant the true mastermind was someone more powerful than Kliner. The next day, Oscar showed Jack a photo of Kliner's murder. Jack identified the cut on Kliner's neck as a Venezuelan butterfly wound, a method that causes suffocation and bleeding simultaneously. Oscar suspected Kliner had worked with Venezuelans who, growing tired of the chaos, decided to kill him. They had always believed Kliner was the mastermind, but now realized the true culprit was still at large. Later, Oscar went to police headquarters, pretending to know nothing about the murder. Mr. Groove ordered him to focus on Kliner's case and put Morrison's aside. As Oscar left, Kliner Jr. appeared, ready to attack for accusing Kliner of murder. Witnessing this, Mr. Groove halted the investigation and gave Oscar a few days off. Meanwhile, Jack visited a workshop to have his car windows tinted. The process would take 3 days, so he paid to borrow another car. While waiting, Oscar gave tomatoes to Mosley and asked why he stayed in Margrave despite the danger. Mosley countered by asking why a Harvard graduate like Oscar worked in such a small town. Oscar avoided the question. At the shelter, Picard assigned Roscoe to guard Charlene and her children. He reminded Charlene to lock all doors, turn off the lights, and never use the fireplace while sleeping. From a hilltop, Jack and Oscar watched Kliner's factory. Oscar absent-mindedly played with his wedding ring as he explained that his wife had died from a fatal illness. Jack was surprised Oscar never corrected the rumor that she had left him. Oscar explained he lived quietly above a tobacco shop and worked at the station as atonement for Sharon. They spotted Kliner's nephew climbing onto a truck, likely carrying counterfeit money. The Coast Guard blockade had made delivery difficult. At the shelter, Roscoe told Charlene about surviving a childhood accident that had killed her parents. Suddenly, a flashlight flickered outside, signaling someone was watching. Roscoe warned Charlene and the children to flee into the forest if she screamed. Oscar and Jack tailed the truck to Tennessee. Meanwhile, Roscoe attempted to catch two hitmen spying near the house, but accidentally alerted them. A shootout ensued. Roscoe shot one attacker in the leg and stopped a grenade just in time. At a motel, Oscar and Jack checked the truck's contents after the driver fell asleep. Kliner's nephew left briefly, and they found the truck empty. Jack called Professor William Brandt, only to learn he had been murdered that morning. He instructed Professor Castillo to stay safe. The next day, Roscoe carried an injured child through the forest to meet Picard. Jack planned to meet Castillo in a secure location. At a diner, Roscoe treated Charlene's daughter's injured foot. Charlene admitted that Paul had left Axis Financial over a year ago and knew about Kliner, but kept it secret. Paul had been called to Venezuela to learn about major clients' operations and was promised a large raise. He accepted and legally transferred currency, pleasing Kliner. Later, at a horse farm, Kliner revealed that Paul's work involved illegal laundering of counterfeit money. Paul faced 30 years in prison and had to follow orders. That night, Paul was locked in a stable while Kliner's men brutally punished a disobedient man. Roscoe understood Kliner's cruelty. Picard picked them up, wondering how enemies had found their hideout. In a taxi, Jack reread Joe's clue paper. The phrases Jobling Garage and Kliner Gray Files remained mysteries. At the police station, Jack noticed a trusted officer by his shoes. Claiming to be a lawyer, Jack requested a meeting with Stephanie Castillo, who was under protection due to death threats. Jack met Castillo, who had worked with Joe. The case involved a massive counterfeit money operation on a global scale. Joe had created a system making counterfeiting nearly impossible by controlling special paper production. Only one company was licensed, but Joe had uncovered illegal production in Georgia. Jack realized Kliner Industries produced counterfeit money to ship to Venezuela, not the other way around. Before leaving, Jack asked Castillo to stay protected at the station. He promised to find a mastermind and make him pay. Jack then asked Diaz about his military background, guessing he was an Army lieutenant based on his uniform. Jack revealed he was a retired Marine major, not a lawyer, but driven to do what was right. After losing 2 federal agents, police officers, and his brother Joe, Jack asked Diaz to protect Castillo. Diaz agreed. Leaving the station, Jack noticed he was being followed. He escaped into an alley, trapped the pursuer, and fought back. Though slashed in the stomach, Jack managed to kill the attacker. That night, Stevenson and his wife discussed the serial murder case, their fear growing as the victims included people they knew. Unseen, four killers dressed in full gear arrived to murder them both. The scene then shifted to Atlanta Airport, where Jack recalled moving to Germany with his family. They found the country boring and isolated, but their mother kept them grounded. Joe was known for his intelligence, Jack for his strength. Oscar picked up Jack and shared news from Professor Castillo, including an assassination attempt by Venezuelans. At Kliner's funeral, Oscar paid his respects despite Kliner's mafia ties. Dawson Kliner accused Oscar of murder. Oscar warned Dawson that if accusations continued without proof, 2 Kliners would be in graves. Oscar drove Jack to retrieve his car from the workshop. Jack noticed a worker covering an oil spill with cat litter. Oscar then learned about Stevenson and his wife's brutal murders, which echoed Morrison's fate. Jack believed psychopaths tortured Stevenson alive as punishment, forcing him to watch his wife's torture. Mirrors at the scene confirmed this. Jack suspected Stevenson wasn't corrupt, but was targeted after Dawson discovered a leak in a delivery truck. Jack planned lunch with Baker, Margrave's last honest cop. Despite his friend's death, Baker ate normally. Jack staged a trap, pretending to trust only Baker. He suspected Baker because he had remained untouched by Mr. Groove's purge. Jack even blamed Oscar as the killer to stay undercover. He told Baker he would search Paul's house for evidence that night. Baker seemed convinced. Jack bought military gear and prepared at Paul's house. Stormy weather arrived as Dawson and his henchmen came to kill him. Jack killed their driver and 2 attackers swiftly. He fought Dawson and was nearly drowned after being thrown into a pool. Jack recovered, shot Dawson, and emerged victorious. Jack called Roscoe to share Professor Castillo's findings. Joe had not uncovered the full counterfeiting scheme. Criminals removed ink from real dollar bills and reprinted them as higher denominations. Paul's job was to supply $1 bills from casinos and parking attendants, which were shipped hidden in feed trucks. The ink waste polluted the Mississippi River. They had killed the environmental agent who tried to expose the pollution. The cattle farm was a front. The feed was processed into a cleaner that removed ink from bills. The clean bills were then reprinted as $100 notes on genuine older paper, making the fakes nearly perfect. Trucks sent the money to Florida for distribution to Venezuela. Their mission was to find proof linking Kliner Industries to counterfeiting. Roscoe reported to Picard that Jack had uncovered the case. Jack called Oscar to meet at Pete Jobling's house. Oscar spotted 3 men stalking him. Jack advised Oscar to use loud TV noise to break through a thin dividing wall and escape an assassination attempt.
See you at Jobling's.
Be there by morning.
The next morning, Pete's burned house confirmed that the attackers had intended to destroy evidence. Jack told Oscar he had killed Dawson and 4 others. Reading Joe's letter, Jack realized that Jobling referred to Pete's father. In Pete's garage, they found a box stamped with Kliner containing millions in counterfeit cash. Jack instructed Oscar to call Picard and meet at the Kliner ranch. This evidence could take down the Kliner Foundation and Mr. Groove. Jack planned to take the money to Bentley. On the way, Neagley revealed that the FBI agent who had handled the environmental agent's murder, Nitmo, had claimed it was a failed robbery. Although Nitmo died 3 years ago, his partner Picard was still active and involved in the mafia alongside Kliner Jr. and Mayor Groove. In the end, the masterminds behind the international counterfeiting ring were Kliner Jr., Mr. Groove, and Picard. They had sacrificed their federal careers for money. Kliner Jr. revealed a video showing Roscoe, Charlene, and her children held hostage. Jack was forced to obey Kliner Jr.'s orders or risk Roscoe suffering Morrison's fate. His mission was to bring Paul to them, suspecting their counterfeit bills were stuck due to Coast Guard blockades while Venezuelan clients waited. It was revealed that Kliner Jr. had killed his own father, slicing his throat to protect the illegal business, believing his father was too afraid to defend it. Kliner Jr. also hired Picard's men to kill the environmental agent in Memphis, Pete Jobling, and Molly in the subway. Kliner Jr. himself killed Joe. Despite his anger, Jack held back. Kliner had shot Joe, and Dawson had brutally kicked his corpse. When Kliner learned that Kliner Jr. and Dawson had killed Police Chief Morrison, he tried to send Kliner Jr. to a mental hospital, but Kliner Jr. refused. Worse still, Mr. Groove planned to frame Jack and Joe as masterminds. He intended to fabricate evidence linking Joe to drug and weapons trafficking and accuse Jack of bribing corrupt police. Picard would escort Jack to find Paul with only 24 hours to succeed. If Jack failed, Roscoe, Charlene, and her children would be killed. Jack and Picard set out to find Paul. Jack invited Picard to his usual coffee shop for black coffee and peach pie, which he never enjoyed. After lunch, Jack studied a map and suspected Paul was hiding in the Augusta region. It was far from Margrave, but close enough for Paul to protect his family. Picard doubted the theory, and Jack sensed Picard planned to kill him but waited for the right moment. When their order arrived, Jack spilled hot coffee on Picard's pants and slashed a tire with a cake fork. They continued toward Augusta. Meanwhile, Oscar was brutally beaten by Baker, one of Kliner Jr.'s henchmen. That night, Jack pulled over after a tire pressure alert. Picard watched closely as Jack changed the tire. Seizing the moment, Jack fought back and shot Picard. Picard's body vanished into nearby bushes.
2, 3.
Jack continued, using Google Maps to reach a motel near the Augusta bus terminal, where he found Paul. At Kliner Industries, the mafia produced counterfeit U.S. dollars. Meanwhile, Mr. Groove moved Charlene's children to another room to ensure their plan proceeded smoothly. Jack easily located Paul, knowing he avoided credit cards and traveled by bus. With little cash, Paul hid in a cheap motel under the name Harrison. At Paul's house, Jack explained that the blood and mess resulted from battles fought there. His goal was to take the truck Dawson had used against him. Back at police headquarters, Baker took Oscar's phone after receiving a message from Jack. Lie low and hide. Jack was ready to storm the detention office. After Baker was killed by a truck, Jack freed Oscar and opened the office's weapons cabinet. The final battle approached. Neagley joined to help. That night, the four met at Mosley's house to plan their infiltration of Kliner Industries. Studying blueprints, Jack pointed to where Roscoe and Charlene were held hostage. Paul's children were separated as psychological pressure to ensure obedience. That night, the team moved in. Neagley sniped guards from a distance while Jack prepared gasoline for a surprise attack. Paul armed himself to help save Roscoe and her family. After Neagley's first shot, Jack killed a suspicious guard. Oscar lit a cigarette, ready to die if necessary. A massive explosion shook Kliner's mafia compound. The groups clashed in a fierce gunfight. Neagley covered the team from above. Jack and Oscar took down enemies in close combat. Paul rescued his children. Oscar fought the criminals fiercely. Jack freed Roscoe and Charlene from their cuffs. Neagley held the line while Charlene rushed to her family. A brutal fight broke out between Oscar and Picard, who survived. Roscoe hunted Mr. Groove, revealing him as Gray's killer. Oscar killed Picard, and Roscoe found her revenge. After escaping the factory, only Jack and Kliner Jr. remained. To distract Kliner Jr., Jack opened a cattle feed bag. When Kliner Jr. was distracted, Jack attacked from behind. After a fierce battle, Jack burned the mastermind behind his brother's death. A massive explosion rocked the factory. Jack escaped safely and was greeted by Roscoe's embrace. After a romantic night, Jack recalled his past. On duty, Joe had called him home as their mother's illness worsened. Joe told Jack not to cry. Their mother refused expert treatment, saying seeing her sons grow up was enough. She had known Jack had hit Curtis as a teen, but Joe had taken the blame to protect Jack. Before dying, their mother gave Jack a war medal from their grandfather, symbolizing courage. That was Jack's last memory of her, and he cried for the first time. In downtown Margrave, Jack and Roscoe shared a final conversation. Jack had to disappear as the FBI and police closed in. He planned to wander. Roscoe would rebuild her hometown. Jack gave Roscoe his personal number and suggested she run for mayor. She agreed, and they shared a kiss. Oscar adopted the dog Jack had saved. At the diner, old friends Oscar and Jack agreed to leave town. Oscar returned to Boston to fulfill his late wife's wish. He named the dog Jack. Finally, Jack enjoyed peach pie. It tasted ordinary. Jack buried the war medal near Joe's resting place and walked away to continue his journey. So the moral of the story is if you're going to frame someone for international counterfeiting and murder, don't mess with a guy who eats peach pie, fights like a tank, and doesn't like wearing prison pants.